Mombasa is the heartbeat of Kenya's and East Africa's economic vibrancy, hosting the largest port in the region, hence making Kenya the preferred gateway to the East and Central African region. Currently, Mombasa City's potential is suffocated by an overwhelmed crossing system at the Likoni Channel. This channel separates the island of Mombasa from the mainland south and also is the access point for the Mombasa port. The channel is the access for ships into and out of the port of Mombasa, the largest port serving the larger East and Central African countries. The channel also acts as a crossing point for vehicles and pedestrians connecting the mainland and the island city. Currently, the channel is estimated to serve about 300,000 commuters and 6,000 vehicles per day. At rush hour, pedestrians rush to compete for space with motor vehicles, and this has been a glaring source of danger for pedestrians and motorists. Over time, there have been fatal accidents coupled with severe congestion, particularly at peak hours. The limited capacity of the ferry services has made the crossing at the Likoni Channel a bottleneck between Mombasa and the south coast. With the confirmation of the first COVID-19 cases in the country in mid-March 2020, the government of Kenya introduced a raft of measures aimed at curbing the spread of the pandemic among citizens. These measures included ensuring high levels of hygiene among citizens, as well as the element of social distancing among citizens at all times. These new measures presented unique challenges at the ferry, despite commendable efforts by county coordination units, security personnel, and the Kenya Ferry Services to streamline services and comply with public health guidelines at the Likoni Channel. Overcrowding at ferry approaches was prevalent, with queues extending up to 2 kilometers at peak hours. This raised concerns of an impending humanitarian crisis, especially with the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. In light of the emergency situation, the Ministry of Transport, Infrastructure, Housing, Urban Development and Public Works was tasked with the implementation of an alternative crossing channel for pedestrians to ease congestion. A desired alternative would be easy to use, friendly, as well as safe for pedestrians to use, while allowing pedestrians to observe social distancing requirements. The implementation of this project was tasked to the Kenya National Highways Authority, KENHA. Construction works for this project have started in earnest, and all parties involved in the implementation of this project are working round the clock to ensure that the project is completed by November 2020. His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta has been at the forefront of the implementation of this pet project. His Excellency has personally led government delegates to inspect the implementation of the project and has called upon the implementing parties to ensure the delivery of the project within the agreed timelines. His Excellency is optimistic that the implementation of critical infrastructure development are one way of building cohesion among Kenyans despite the challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic.
So sasa utakuwa unaandaliwa mambo yako kwa ati saa ya feri ni saa ngapi? Ni wewe masaa yako na kazi yako ikifika unavuka. Ile itatusimamisha kidogo labda ni meli ikipita. Lakini ukitaka kama wewe kazi yako ni ya saa 11 unaanza. Kama wewe safari yako ni ya saa 5 unaenda. Hakuna sasa kwenda kugojea, kupiga laini, kufanya nini. Wewe unatoka nyumbani, unaingia kazini, unamaliza kazini, unaenda nyumbani.
The Likoni Floating Bridge is a crossing at the Likoni Channel for the exclusive use of pedestrians as an alternative to the ferry. The Likoni Floating Bridge is therefore a complementary facility to the existing ferry services for residents accessing Mombasa Island. The construction of a pedestrian crossing will allow pedestrians to walk safely on a platform across the entire width of the Likoni Channel to alleviate queues and human challenges, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. Design brief. The total length of the project is 1,058.89 meters. Offshore bridges include 248.04 meters north trestle, 21.74 meters north transition span, 241.52 meters floating part, 21.74 meters south transition span, and a 188.29 meters south trestle. The clear walkway width is 6 meters. The floating bridge is mainly composed of standard pontoons, decks, middle bascule span, end piles, anchorage system and power system. The pontoon is structured by length of 3 meters, width of 14 meters and height of 2.4 meters steel box. Along the bridge, a deck is set between 2 pontoons and is connected to the pontoon with pins. Every 2 pontoons and 1 deck form a standard assembly. To adapt the navigation of small boats, the bascule span in the middle can be lifted to adapt the connection among the floating part. Transition span and end piles, a combination composed of 5 standard pontoons, is set at the end of a floating part as a transitional floating platform. The pontoon combination is connected with end piles through a pile connector. At the end piles is a pile assembly composed of steel pipe piles and top bracings. 5 steel pipe piles are used for one set. In order to adapt the horizontal force of current, wave and wind applied to the floating part, 4 oblique cables are set in the middle, not the floating part, and 4 Y-shaped cables are set at the end. Each cable is fixed on the pontoon at one end and anchored to an underwater gravity anchor at the other end. 4 gravity anchors are deployed on the seabed. The floating body has no power. In order to realize the bridge opening and closing, it is necessary to equip onboard motors at specific positions. The bridge can be opened and closed through operation by the staff for navigation needs. In order to ensure the mooring of the floating part when completely opened, 2 groups of mooring piles are set at the end of the open track. It is used for mooring the floating part after opening and anchoring under extreme conditions. A superstructure of trestle adopts prefabricated Bailey truss, which is featured with fairly high standardization and construction efficiency. The substructure of the trestle adopts steel pipe piles. Highlights: bridge opening and closing. The bridge is designed to be a swing opened symmetrically in the channel. The movable parts can be opened and closed, each half individually, or both sides at the same time, which is faster, but the requirements for personnel and equipment are higher. When the bridge is open, at least 150 meters navigable width can be guaranteed for the passage of ships. Turning the onboard motors in the opposite direction of the water flow so that the power and the flow force are balanced to maintain the state of the structure. Lifting the bascule span, loosen the oblique cable on the other side of the opening direction and move the released oblique cable longitudinally to the end floating platform. Fasten the mooring cable at the swing axis. Remove the connecting pins of pontoons at the swing axis. Operate the onboard motor and move the floating part to a certain safety distance. Due to the mooring cable at the swing axis, the floating part swings around the axis. The oblique anchor cable at the opening side shall be collected slowly with the opening process. When it is close to the mooring pile for a certain distance, lower the throttle and approach slowly to avoid collision, and then moor the mooring pile by a cable. Repeat the previous steps to open the other half. When the opening is completed, the ships can pass the channel under traffic control. The closing process is the reversal of the opening process. Tidal adaptation. In the channel, the highest average tide level is plus 4.1 meters. The lowest average tide level is minus 0.1 meters, and the maximum tidal range is 4.2 meters. In order to adapt to such a huge tidal range, a 27-meter transition span is set between the floating part and the trestle part. It's functional as an approach slab so as to realize the pedestrian passage under different tide levels. The Likoni Floating Bridge can effectively relieve the traffic pressure of existing ferries during the COVID-19 pandemic period. The new bridge will also create a shorter route linking Mombasa and mainland South with significant social benefits. With works scheduled to be complete this year, Filling of the first embankment at Likoni is complete. Pile testing has started, followed by pile driving into the ocean, which will take a minimum of 25 days. Infrastructure is a key enabler in the government's development agenda, and the Likoni Floating Bridge is a show of the government's commitment to providing a conducive environment for its development agenda. As the first of its kind in Kenya and the East Africa region, the Likoni Floating Bridge will not only complement ferry services at the Likoni Channel, but also enrich the commuter experience by reducing time wastage.